Hello, I'm Daniel Weinmann, and this is Brave New Brands, the podcast where we get to know the stories behind our most authentic consumer products. And today we have Jean-Sebastien Siow. In October 2015, he and his brother Jeremie launched Suitablee. It all started from an idea to combine old-school tailoring with technology while making their products accessible and affordable. They've taken deep dives into AI, body scans, and other efficiencies to produce the perfect fitting garment at 50% of the price than what their competitors can offer. Technology is what differentiates Suitablee from the pack, but as you're gonna see, they didn't start with tech. I hope you enjoy it. Let's check it out. Jean-Sebastien, welcome, man, to Brave New Brands, our podcast about startups that are changing the way commerce is being done in the world. And I'm very excited to know more about you, your story, and just chat freely.
Sounds good. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation. It's always an honor.
Amazing, man. Maybe let's start from the get-go. What was the spark of inspiration that led you to create Suitablee?
It's a good question. So my background is in engineering, and I used to work in the corporate world. And when I mean that, larger companies, meetings, customers, consulting, and so forth. Wearing a suit was always an important piece of my day job, and so. One thing that I just couldn't understand was, why were suits or custom suits so expensive? So you can imagine that somebody that wears a suit daily would need to spend, $20,000 a year if they wanted custom suits only. So that didn't make any sense. So I think at the time, the idea was to be able to not only make suits or custom suits more affordable, but more accessible. And so we didn't see that there were viable options from a price point as well as from an online point. So 5 years ago, we were looking at the industry of retail in general, and we were starting to see the transition of brick and mortar into online. And so we said, we have an opportunity to get our feet wet and try to find a way that we can sort of offer custom suits online.
I imagine there's also a personal story behind leaving the corporate world and starting your own thing. What's behind that?
I was born in Montreal in Canada, and my mother is Vietnamese. My father is from Mauritius. His parents were from China. And so obviously they, when they came here and they met each other in university studying, one of the things coming from, let's say, a war country or instability is that you want your children to, study or, something that's stable. And so, the choices aren't, I think as a parent today, I'm much more open to my kids eventually studying things that are, less stable, so to speak, such as music, art, philosophy, whatnot. But in their minds, it wasn't much of an option. We didn't have much options. And so I studied engineering. And obviously, going to school, I realized that, yes, although it's interesting, I was never going to be a phenomenal engineer, nor was I interested in being an engineer. I was always more into the business side of things. I preferred the face-to-face meetings, and by face-to-face, not necessarily Zoom calls, but at the time, I was traveling a lot, and I liked the consulting piece where I was able to interface with people. And so when I did my MBA, it sort of opened my eyes to the different opportunities and possibilities with respect to, what we could do. And with, suits is not an easy business. Fashion is not an easy business. But that doesn't mean that it's, not doable. And so, that's sort of how, we got into it. It was a risky move at the time with, we had good salaries. Things were, going well. But we tried our luck with this.
That's incredible. Yeah, I totally can see the generational aspect of you now having gone through your journey, now wanting a different, not wanting, but open to a different journey for your kids. How many kids do you have?
I have two kids, so they're still very young. My son is 5. My daughter is 1. So they're still very young, but as they're, as my son, for example, is starting to get ready to go to school, I can see myself being, open to these possibilities and seeing what he likes and all those things. My parents didn't looked at it as, well, we came to Canada. We need to have, not for anything. We came here for a reason so that you can have a better future.
Yeah.
And so, the decisions that you make or you have your kids make are a little bit more, there's more at stake.
And did you start Suitablee by yourself with co-founders? What's the story?
Yeah. So my brother, Jeremie, co-founded the company with me. But I think that, it would have given my parents a heart attack if we both quit our jobs. So, I started full-time with Suitablee, and Jeremie still kept his job, and he was helping out in evenings and weekends because, him leaving, both brothers leaving their jobs to do this full-time was a bit risky. And when things started to get, much better, much smoother around the second year, that's when Jeremie joined me full time.
Now that we know a little bit about the background, can you share with people at home what's Suitablee, what the company do, the vision, the mission?
That's a great question. The vision changed a lot. And anybody that says in stone that their visions or their paths don't change when they start a company they must be geniuses, because no one can completely visualize a future of a company and all the unpredictable things that happen. So, initially the idea was to have everything sort of like an online retailer for suits, where you're able to design your outfits online. And in that spirit, getting a little bit away from all the tech part, because we were sort of tired at that point and saturated with all the engineering stuff. So, we started off doing things on the road, meeting customers, getting the brand out there, getting suits out there. And slowly the vision changed, and we realized that, there were correlations in, specific people in terms of measurements, in terms of sizing, in terms of personalities, in terms of age, in terms of ethnicities. We started noticing that there's a lot of commonalities. Just to give you an example, I'm Asian. And so we started realizing that, Asians have, short limbs, short arms in general, right?
Got it.
Versus, let's say, other ethnicities that have smaller shoulders in general and what so forth. So we started realizing as well that there were correlations between specific measurements of body parts. And so with the wealth of data, we said, well, why don't we jump in and start incorporating some technology and some data analysis? And the further we got into it, the smarter we got, so to speak. And, we started using our artificial intelligence and using our data, as a neural network where we can sort of draw information. So all that to say, in today's world, Suitablee is a company that sells custom menswear online. So dress shirts, suits, using, technology, artificial intelligence to eliminate error. So not only are we eliminating the guesswork, we're optimizing and digitizing the whole process. Rather than using tapes and very old-fashioned ways of doing things, we're using technology to sort of generate the perfect fitting patterns for your garment. So so the customers can sit at home, use our automatic sizing technology, which consists of about 12 questions that the customers can answer. And we're able to dig into our database of thousands of customers that we've measured throughout the years and spit out the ideal, so to speak, garment pattern for their suits.
That's incredible. Just a quick anecdote about, I think it was the year 2000. One of my first jobs as in the software industry was creating an application for a totem pole where you would fill your measurements and try to do what you do now. But of course, at the time, it didn't even work. It was for a big retailer. It was deployed, but very few people wanted to use it. So of course, technology made leaps progress in the interim, but you've accomplished something that I know it's hard to do.
Yeah, I think one of the things is you can only get there by having, gotten out there. So a lot of times in today's world, And especially with COVID, people like to hide behind their desks and get work done.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do what we do if you're not out there, getting your product out, talking to customers, asking what their preferences are. If you're 60 years old, your needs are not necessarily what a prom teenager would want out of a suit. So, actually going out and meeting customers and measuring them and understanding them helped a lot in developing the data collecting that we've been doing. And it's more than just 12 measurements that we were collecting. We were collecting a wealth of data so that, we'd be able to get to the point there that we are today.
You mentioned it helped you with finding out what data you need, how to use the intelligence that later on became artificial, but first probably was real human intelligence doing the work. Besides that, did it help you with the business development also? Like, were you able to become profitable before you invested in technology and this kind of thing?
100%. I like watching YouTube and I like listening to podcasts of successful entrepreneurs. Not necessarily, I don't really enjoy things like self-help, the guys that just sell self-help. That's not my, I'm not really into that. I like to listen to people that have actually made it in the business world. That really inspires me. Because they've done it. And so when I listened to an interview by Kevin Plank, who's the CEO of Under Armour, you have to think, right? Under Armour, I mean, obviously it's had its challenges in the last years, but they were nothing. And they were challenging Nike and all Adidas and all the larger brands in the athleisure industry. He mentioned the fact that, before going out and getting financing and developing technologies, he always had this philosophy of saying, well, why don't you just sell more? People are so stuck in trying to get financing. It's become sexy to go for round one, round two, and getting financed and diluting your equity. It's become such a sexy topic with all of the shows that we're seeing that people aren't looking at profitability anymore. They're just developing an idea, but it's very easy to spend money that's not yours, not realizing that at the end of the day, you need to pull a profit. Before we even invested any money into the heavy things like the more technological pieces, we needed to make sure that we had a viable product at the right price point, there was a demand that people were actually buying. Because if we're investing money into the technology and nobody wants suits to begin with at this price point, it's a wasted investment. So before we even got into saying, let's start reinvesting some of our profits into technology, we had to make sure that we had a market for what we were selling and a willingness for customers to buy suits online, a custom suit. So that's sort of the evaluation that we did before investing more into that. So to answer your question, we were profitable right away.
That's amazing. I love really this is my passion. Businesses that even when they want to have a product, know that their business is actually service. So they start with service. And in my experience, whenever you start with service, it's hard to not maintain a culture of service later on because it's in your DNA. And then when you have a product with a lot of help from technology, you still see yourself as providing service to people. And of course, Suitablee fits that ideal of mine perfectly.
I think you hit it on the nail. It's one thing to have products online and sell them, but it's another thing to provide sort of that experience and that service that we do online. I think the experience that we provide our customers online is hopefully currently unmatched and hopefully will not be matched. And we've really invested with COVID this year into the whole, virtual consultation. So when we look at our calendars today, we've noticed that a lot of our calendars are filled with virtual consultations. Mm-hmm. And so that's a result of us wanting to continue on that service piece where if you want us to hold your hand as you're adding your items to cart and you're helping to choose the options of your suit, we do that. And we could do that through video. It works just as well. So I think that's the piece that, that's really helped us continue in the idea of service as we scale. because service as you scale is very difficult.
Yes, definitely. And from what I saw on LinkedIn, you still have a very small team, right? How many people
Yeah,
today?
I mean, the idea is that we want to keep Suitablee, in line with our strategy, which is to be very low overhead. So we don't have stores, we don't have brick and mortar, and everything needs to be as automated as possible. So the moment that somebody enters an order, there's no guesswork, there's very little human interaction. Our tailors or anybody that's doing quality control gets a very detailed IKEA assembly sort of list where it's all automated. There's no, well, I need to ask this person this, I need to work with this department. No, it's generated, digitally for them. So we've really been able to sort of eliminate as much as possible the overhead. And the people that do work with us tend to be multi-talented, multi-skilled. So whether they're freelancers, whether they're outsourced, we focus on the part that we're good at, and we'll outsource the pieces of the company to either freelancers or people that can work remotely.
When you have this technology, the way I think about it is like a business process with the help of technology. Do you think a lot about the user experience on your team's end or on your partner's end, so they learn what they need to do and what are you expecting from them and what's the job by interacting with your technology? Or is it more like guides, tutorials, etc., etc.?
We do a lot of learning on the job. So every time, because we're in such a unique business and every customer is unique in its own sense and the customizations are unique, we realize that there are, opportunities probably with every purchase. We find opportunities that we could do things better, that things can be more automated, communications are better without over communicating. Because if you have too much data, that's also a problem. Yeah. So, every sale is an opportunity, and we'll revise that on a weekly basis. We have the luxury to sell luxury items, and we don't sell 1,000 suits a week. If we don't sell candy where we have to fulfill 10,000 orders a week at $5. We sell items, people on average spend about $800 to $900 US per purchase. So we don't have to go through 1,000 orders. We can look at 50, 100 orders and say, these are the opportunities. This is where we missed. This is where we got it. So we're able to improve on that.
That's amazing. So a lot of teamwork around learning and improving processes.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's vital. I mean, I think, the key and the competitive advantage in this business is how well we manage our overhead.
Yeah, the thing I'm trying to learn from you here is how much do you spend on technology for improving processes and hiring someone new, for example? How much will you invest in like shadowing together with someone that's really experienced when you bring someone on, or using your tool? Because I have an assumption that it's very expensive to build technology, and since the processes are changing a lot, you would have to be changing a lot here.
That's a good question. I don't view things the way you do. I don't think technology is expensive, because technology, once you've developed it, has, there's tweaks to make and changes to make, but it's there to stay. So your technology becomes cheaper and cheaper for every sale that you're generating in the future. Right. So if you're selling one suit, that technology is really expensive. If you're selling 1,000 suits, suddenly you're looking at the technology and you're saying, okay, we have the scale to make it cheap. So it's sort of a mix between developing the technology, but also we have a strategy in the way that we hire our employees. We start looking quite young. So we go, we're lucky in Montreal, it's a hub for IT. There's a lot of people that study an engineer, computer science, and fashion. So, I'm a big basketball fan, and I love watching the way that some teams can succeed and some don't. I like to develop from within. So we will hire somebody that has a tremendous amount of potential, but does not know, yet, or they haven't, and not only when I mean potential, I don't mean I'm only good at coding, I'm only good at fashion, I'm only good at video, I'm only good at content. We find people that are very multi-talented. So the problem right now with companies is you have marketing that's very siloed, sales that's very siloed, technology that's very siloed, and they don't work together. Whereas we look at hiring people that not only can be good at content and understanding strategy, but can be very good at the technical piece, right? So that's sort of like, I'm a basketball fan, like I mentioned, positionless basketball. Back in the day, centers can only shoot layups. Now they're shooting threes, they're jumping, they're running, they're doing everything. So that's sort of like, we want to build like a flat organization with very multi-skilled, multifaceted individuals.
Got it, 100%, man. What would you say is your current moment? I know I'm going to present two options, but you can add a third one. Do you think you have more demand than you can fulfill, or more capacity than you have demand for?
Good question. The beauty about the business is that we've built a business that can be scaled. When in the custom industry, we don't necessarily have inventory. So I don't need to hold inventory. I don't need to have suits available. I don't need fabrics to be available. So the way that the business is built is that we have the capacity exactly for the sales that we have.
Perfect. And you can plan that weekly, monthly. What's the adjustment you have?
Yeah, I mean the adjustment is really in fabric inventory, right? And so fabric inventory, fabric cutters, things like that. It can be scaled quite easily because a lot of that stuff is the suppliers that provide fabric are fairly used to the ups and downs of demand, and they're the ones that take the risk by holding inventory. And then in terms of cutting fabric and workmanship, that can easily be scaled up and down with third parties.
That's incredible. So if in 1 week you have a spike in demand, you can adjust for that one specific week and then reduce if the next week.
That's right. We don't pay for unused capacity. So we spend on used capacity, and we make sure that the potential or the buffer for growth in capacity is sufficient for any spike in demand.
I'm also an engineer. That's a very engineer-like approach to the business. I love it.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. And you know what? Like I said, I don't think I've mentioned it, but a lot of people, I speak to a lot of conferences, to a lot of people and universities, and a lot of them come from fashion backgrounds, and they speak to me from a fashion perspective. And a lot of times I speak from an engineering angle. Yeah. And so I see that you're understanding my logic in the way that I think, and my logic in the way that I run the business. And when I speak, sometimes I have to change some concepts a little bit, because in fashion school, they learn the very technical parts of, do customers prefer this type of silhouette? What about pattern making? All those things. It's completely different. Whereas engineers have to think like, capacity, supply chain, all that stuff.
And you end up innovating by not knowing I'm not saying you don't know the terms of the industry, but not coming from that, not having been raised professionally from within that industry. And what would you say is, imagine everything went right 10 years from now, what makes you happy with Suitablee? Yeah,
that's a good question. Do we position Suitablee for, franchising, for acquisitions, for brick and mortar, for, I have these strategic meetings, at least once a year with my business partner. And we're sort of looking at where do we visualize taking Suitablee in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. One thing is for sure is we'd like to dominate the online custom suits world. That's one thing. And I think, being able to provide that experience online is probably the biggest thing, the service piece, because eventually technology will catch up. There are smart engineers in the world that will look at what we do, and they're going to say, well, we can do the same thing. I think the advantage now is we probably have the first movers advantage and understanding the business and, positioning it for there. But yeah, I think I'd like to be in about 3 to 5 years one of the dominant players in the online custom suits world.
Yeah. And where are you at now? Do you know?
I'd say we're probably in the top 2 in Canada, probably in top 5 in the US for online custom suits.
You're almost there, man.
It's a tougher market, I would say, especially being from Canada. It's a little bit tougher to expand in the States from a PR perspective.
Yeah.
Right. So we have the visibility in Canada because we're local. News will cover us because we're local. Now, how do we jump over that hump and get the credibility in the US, I think? And we've just opened into Europe earlier this year. So how do we start getting some credibility in those markets?
Yeah, totally. You will grow the team. I'm talking here about a core team, not the elastic team, about a core team by some factor once you go stronger in Europe, the US, and the whole world. As an entrepreneur, do you have a cap size in terms of a team you want to work with? Do you see yourself growing as much as needed to achieve that goal? What's the, because there are trade-offs in terms of culture.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing's for sure is we're not going to grow the company with unneeded risk. So I'm going to be 40 in 6 months. My kids are growing up. We've always said we can have a pretty good company for 10 to 20 years, right? And we'll be able to retire very well and do very well. At what cost do you grow a company so fast and you take on so much risk and borrow so much money that you're suddenly looking at yourself 3 years down the line and saying, my debt is through the roof. I borrowed too much money. We've hired too many people. Our fixed costs are too high. We want to keep our fixed costs as low as possible and keep them as variable as possible for the time being.
Have you had moments where you did take unnecessary risk and then had to at least go through some kind of scare?
No. My partner is very he's very risk averse. He's a big fan of growing a business the traditional way, which is reinvest your money, do it well, think of 5 years, whereas the larger companies are thinking of the next quarterly report, doing all types of spending to hit specific numbers of revenue while losing net profit for the next quarter. Big companies do that. And so we choose to take the marathon view as opposed to the sprint. So we don't take we're very risk averse, I would say.
The both of you.
He's more money risk averse. I'm more partnership averse. We get approached by, lots of companies to build partnerships and, sell, distribute other products and diversify our company. And, I'm risk averse to that stuff.
And what is the channel you use the most for generating demand and growth at this moment? We
have a very sexy product. It's very visual. So we're not selling software, which is hard to sell, for a visual person. So because we're so visual, obviously social media like Instagram, Facebook, very useful for us. YouTube, very useful because it's such a visual product. So those work very well. And then obviously Google, for the people that are into doing specific searches, those people are ready to buy now.
Yes.
And people are Googling, they're ready to buy now. So that's where we've put our money for the immediate sales. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's people, you generally find the where you can close. Social media is more for the brand awareness, where it's like, okay, I'm aware that Suitablee exists. And when I do need a suit, I know who to go to. Yeah.
And in terms of brand awareness, is it content, a lot of content?
Yeah. I think, one thing in becoming an entrepreneur, beyond the technology, probably most of the time we're thinking about content. The product I feel very confident about. We spent the first few years on it. And suits don't change much from a technical and construction point of view. But the second most important thing after technology is our content. How do we continue being relevant using the different platforms? There's a new social media platform every year that comes out. We need to stay on top. Is it worth, for example, investing in Snapchat? We said no. Snapchat is not something we want to invest in. Did we want to invest in TikTok? No. That's not. It wasn't necessarily our market. So Instagram and Facebook remain to us the strongest social medias and search engine, optimization and marketing.
One thing that I am very interested in is bespoke e-commerce players like yourself. What in your mind are the pros and cons? What is the best about being offering a bespoke product? What is the worst about offering a bespoke product?
Yeah, it's a good question. Bespoke products are cool because they're unique. So we play an important role in everybody's, purchasing decisions. So we're part of people's weddings, part of people's interviews. We get to build that story with them. So that's probably one of the fun parts, of doing stuff that's bespoke is you can't find these products somewhere else. Everybody's going to have that one suit, and that's the only suit in the world that exists in that specific way. So I would say that's the fun part. The part that's probably less fun is the customer that's looking for a bespoke experience, given that we're online. So we try to make it as close as possible to being bespoke, but it'll never be, going to, Savile Row. It's never going to be like that. Yeah. So you're going to have the customer and the other thing is the understanding of what a customer is paying. So if you're going to go into Savile Row and buy a bespoke suit, it's going to cost you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. We're selling them our suits for $600 to $800. So, to have the expectation, I think, of people who are buying bespoke or made to measure, get a specific fit and analyze every little centimeter of a suit. That's probably the least pleasant thing, because I don't go into, let's say, a Kia dealership expecting to get BMW coffee. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I can see by the way you expressed it that you must deal with it quite regularly, and had to devise strategies how to communicate it better, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we realized in the first years was to really identify our customers. So if we're not attracting the right customers, the experience is not necessarily great. So throughout the buying process online, and for the people that come to get measured in our showroom, we make the expectations very clear. Yeah. There's no way that you can miss it throughout the buying process.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just to make sure, I think I know the answer to it, but we're talking about the same quality of a $2,000-3,000 suit for a third of the price, half the price, or something like that.
Well, so I would say that probably in what we're offering, probably half the price.
Same quality.
Same quality.
Something about the experience needs to change, and technology makes it.
Yeah, I think it's just not making errors. And when you buy a luxury brand, you're paying for the in-store experience, you're paying for the employee's salary, you're paying for the coffee that they serve you. Those are all things that people don't realize that they're paying for when they're getting a certain product. So by being online, you're not paying for your coffee that we have to serve you. You're not paying for the janitor that needs to clean, the store every evening. It's all overhead costs that people don't realize that they're paying for.
And have you ever in your journey, I don't know if you even have some kind of line around it today, but have you ever worked with non-bespoke products? Do you sell things off the shelf?
Our shop right now online, everything is bespoke. From our ties to our shoes to our accessories. Everything is custom. I mean, you can buy the actual, what we realized online is people don't necessarily want to design, right? Like, I know that we talk about bespoke so you can design your suit, but we've realized that people want to see an actual suit, and they're like, I like that one. That's exactly what I don't need to configure it. I don't need to change buttons, options. I want exactly that. So I think that's sort of the revelation, is that people don't necessarily, as much as people like the concept of bespoke, they still want to be told what to get given what their needs are.
Given their preferences, their tastes, and you can, and I imagine the consultations, the virtual consultations are helping a lot with that.
That's right.
Maybe instead of the user designing their own suit, they will have a consultation, and based on their preference, you'd recommend maybe this
We
one
do
or
it.
that
We
one?
do it all. We do it all. One of the things that we've realized with online is if you wait for a customer to decide what color of buttons they want, it's going to take an hour. You have to make the recommendation to get to the next step. If you don't do it, then you're just going to, and I don't think that we're targeting people that care so much between button 1, 2, 3. They just want to look good. So it's like, okay, so what button should I take? Take button number 2. Done. That's the beauty of online.
One of the things I see as an advantage of the bespoke service model is these days, I think it acts more like a moat to protect your business, because so many entrepreneurs are wanting to create the product that do it all for people, and are not willing to do the service and create the deep knowledge about your ideal customer that service generates. Do you think that this is one of your competitive advantages?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we'll attract a certain competitor, a certain customer, but we don't necessarily go after the traditional bespoke customers either, right? We're going after, because the traditional bespoke guys are just going to go to a store. And we don't want those guys either, because those are the very, very picky guys that are going to look at every single thread on a button. We want the guys that are saying, I usually go to a store and get off the rack stuff, but I have a special occasion. I have a special job now. I'm willing to spend a little bit more, but I don't want to go through coffee and 5 meetings. And I don't want to do that. I just want a good looking suit that I get to customize a little bit and fit good, right? Yeah, so it's like an we're not targeting the guy that wants the off the rack. We're not targeting the guy that likes the experience of a tailor and the coffee and the fancy music and the conversations, 5, 6 meetings. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking at this guy here that wants to make the jump here, but does not have the patience to go here.
Yeah, I'm your target audience, 100%. I'm saying I used to, because of the pandemic, I used to dance tango. So I have the menwear fetish or something like that. But I buy off the rack because
I think men in general, their online buying behaviors are just, let me add to cart, put in my credit card, and I don't want to think about it anymore. I want it to be done.
Yeah. So but in my case, it's not done because I always need to adjust things anyway. But I end up having a worse experience. So I think you're solving something that's very relevant to, at least to my pre-COVID way of life.
Right.
This was amazing. I'm truly honored to have you today because you're doing the kind of business work, the kind of perspective around business being bootstrapping and all that's related to that I'm really passionate about. And it's always a pleasure to meet fellow entrepreneurs on a similar road.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you for giving us a voice. I think it's very appreciated. And it's been a real pleasure to speak to you and keep doing what you're doing. I think it's very invaluable, especially, I've done quite a few podcasts and interviews, and I think your level of questioning when it comes to the perspective of the technology, it's a little bit, like I said, more engineering than I'm used to. So it's kind of a nice change.
Amazing, man. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
I'm Daniel Weinmann, and this was Brave New Brands. I hope you had a great time and were able to learn a lot during this conversation. Please follow me on YouTube, LinkedIn, and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming service. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.